you, my favorite one. Thanks. Are you back here? 1, 2, 3, 4.
So we're going to go straight into our paper session. We're going to have 5 paper talks. And in the interest of time, I'm going to ask the presenters to get ready to present as we're taking questions for the previous presentation. Your presentation should be in a folder on this machine if you've uploaded it already according to the instructions you have received. So without further ado, our first presenter.
I don't know if the presentation is here actually. It's not?
Where would it be? Michelle, where would it be?
It should say Huerta. Huerta. I uploaded
Like
to the
which
drive.
folder?
Oh, it's in the Google Drive.
Yeah, Google Drive.
Yeah.
You have to get them from
Yeah, they're in the Google Drive.
There you go.
Where is it? Is it here? This
That's
is
the
also
first session, I think.
Oh, yeah. Somewhere here.
This one.
Yeah. Just download it to here and then.
Download it on Direct
That's good.
Presenter.
Good.
Yes.
All these notifications. Download it.
Maybe we should do that. Download all of them. Michelle,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
maybe.
would have been good. Yeah.
do you want to start the next one and the next one?
If you want to do it now, I think we have
It's
2 or
okay,
3
we have
minutes.
2 minutes.
Yes, but I don't know by heart who are all the.
Oh, because they're all together.
Yeah, you can download all of them, but.
That's gonna take
Can you download everything into a folder?
Yeah, I can download everything. I think I get a zip. Yeah, see, it's gonna make a zip file.
Zip it and hope that this ends up soon.
Yeah, that's good.
Maybe. But meanwhile, I think you can get started because you already downloaded yours. Yes?
Okay.
Because
Well, we are still 3 minutes ahead, so let's see how fast this is going.
Yeah.
it's making the zip file.
Yeah, but
Oh, yeah, this is time. Yeah. Okay. Let's wait as far as it doesn't interfere the PowerPoint.
No, normally on a Mac all notifications are put aside when you are in a presentation sort of mode. So normally nothing. I never had anything happen like that.
Okay, good.
Oh, it's almost there. Suddenly it's gonna. Intriguing. That
Downloading
is
from Drive.
really fast.
Hang on.
Yeah.
I
don't
have
know.
a pointer.
Yeah, there is
We
one.
have a pointer.
What the? Okay. That's the stick for the point.
Somebody took it. Oh, here. No, it's fine. It is
looking
downloading
for the
the
pointer.
presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Good.
Downloads.
Get rid of this thing. Yeah, it's not done yet.
And downloads, maybe.
Almost.
Oh, that is Safari.
Yeah, it's still loading. So
Ah,
this is it.
okay.
Here.
Huerta.
Which one is yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Slideshow.
Can I see the count here, the time? With,
Actually, it doesn't show up on the screen yet.
yes.
So do you know what
It should show up in the screen.
Do we have the? Wait.
Well, it's because the HDMI
The
cable.
HDMI cable is not connected. That's not surprising.
Okay. So let's start it from here.
Yay.
Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you very much for coming. So I'm really happy to be here Closer, okay. So I'm saying that I'm really happy to be here today talking about this type of things, tree visualization, which is actually not my main field of work. I work in comparative genomics and metagenomics, so more data analysis and big data analysis, let's say. And I'm going to talk about something that is more a hobby project for me, which is how to visualize this information and this data that we generate in our lab. So the reason I was developing this was basically because we needed this to do to work in our lab. So the topic is visualizing huge trees. I was in the beginning I thought on saying large trees, but there is a weak definition of what is a large tree. I'm really pursuing a goal which is visualizing huge tree, more than 1 million nodes in one single tree. So in our group we sorry. Oh, okay. Okay, so in our group we developed one tool that is called ETE Toolkit, which is a Python library. Actually, it's not a standalone tool. It's a Python library that we use to perform all these operations, this visualization in a programmatic way. So I'm going to summarize a little bit what we understand by programmatic visualization of phylogenetic trees or trees in general. So basically what we do with ETE Toolkit is we load our data, which is a tree, a Newick tree coming from phylogenetic analysis software. For instance, we load it into the Python interpreter and we can interact with the different nodes, etc., as normal Python objects. You can annotate the trees, you can even integrate into Jupyter notebooks, etc. And ETE also has the ability to interact with some properties in these node objects that control how these nodes are going to look when you start the visualization. This is what is called programmatic visualization. And it's very powerful when you are trying to automate the process of visualizing big data or just visualizing a lot of data in pipelines. So for the automatic programmatic visualization in ETE, there are like 3 layers that I will briefly introduce. One is the tree style, which is the general properties that we are using to control how the tree looks, the general aspect of the tree, if it is circular, rectangular, whatever. Then for each node, remember that each node, once it is loaded into ETE Toolkit, each node is an object, so you can operate with some properties that control how different nodes in the tree are going to look. So you can control the size of the node, the type of the line that is going to be drawn, etc. And there is 1/3 layer that is very powerful and allows to create very customized visualization of trees, which are in ETE is called faces, node faces, but are actually graphical elements that you can attach to nodes, and you can do this programmatically. So there is like a virtual grid attached to each object, to each node in ETE, where you can attach and say, I want to have this image on top of the branch, or on bottom of the branch of this specific node, or I want this graphical element to be aligned to the end of the tree, and all this is programmatically controlled. So with small Python functions, you can say you can combine features in the node. You can say, if this node has this weight, then I want to add a blue bubble here with this size and in this specific position. And you can complicate this as much as you want. The power of this is that with code, the details here are not very important. But with little amount of code, you can create very interesting and richful images for trees. You can control everything. We use it a lot for phylogenetic tree representation, and there are faces pre-created for alignments and stuff like this. But you can adapt to your own needs. So, what's the problem? Why I'm here is because this ETE Toolkit is working very well for, let's say, 1,000 tips tree, 1,000 nodes. But as soon as you start working with more data, with larger trees, this is going to collapse. You can work with maybe 5,000 nodes, but no more than this. And even if you can load it, there is a problem on how to interpret the images that you are creating with ETE and also with other software. So the problems that we have is that, well, first, programmatic visualization is not very common. I mean, most of the software is standalone software for exploring the tree. With ETE and programmatic visualization, you can, maybe if you have a large data set, you can focus on specific parts and visualize just a sub-part of the tree, etc., but it's not very convenient to explore your data visually, but with a lot of coding behind. So we really want something that allows exploration, so interactive exploration of these large trees. Standalone viewers, believe it or not, are doing a very bad job here. I know that tree data structures are a basic data structure and are all around in scientific analysis for clustering, phylogenetics, for a lot of stuff, but still there is no good software where you can load a large phylogenetic tree and really explore. So this is actually a need that we have. Even when the trees are loaded, the programs are doing a very bad job to show you something that is actually informative. You can load it, so what? You start zooming in, zooming out, but the information that you are receiving from the software that is visualizing this is not really useful. I will show you some examples later. And this is because the layouts are not optimized for large representations. The branches and the decorations usually overlap when you are visualizing. The branch lengths, which are very important in phylogenetic trees, become useless when you are visualizing very large data structures. And complex annotations are also something that you cannot use in most of the software that is available. Complex annotations, especially for internal nodes, which are very important when you are exploring large trees. So there are a couple of exceptions, very nice tools that were developed in the past, trying to solve this problem for one specific use case, which is a tree of life with 2 million nodes. They created OneZoom, which is a fractal representation of the tree of life, where you can actually browse very interactively and also very smoothly. And there is LiveMap, which is using like a Google Maps styling approach to browse the tree of life. But they are very ad hoc for the tree of life. You cannot use it for your own data. And also there is a lot of information that we usually use in the lab, probably you as well, like features and data that you want to attach to the nodes that it's not visible here. You don't have branch lengths, you don't have a heat map attached to the different nodes that it's giving you some extra information, etc. So apart from this, there is basically nothing that you can use to move these large trees. So I probably naively set this goal some years ago for the next version of ETE. I wanted to have a version of ETE that was able to interactively explore trees in a smooth, responsive, and interactive, as I said, way. I want to do this with fully annotated trees, like we are doing with a normal phylogeny, with 1,000 tips, with all the data included there. And I wanted to scale this to at least 1 million nodes using resources that we could all have in a laptop computer, so you don't need supercomputers or servers for this. So with 1 gigabyte of RAM, just one modern CPU, and at least 1 frame per second. This one frame per second refers to the fact of how fast can you update your image when you are exploring the tree, a tree of this size. So if you want to zoom in and zoom out, this 1 frame per second is what is giving you the feeling of moving smoothly, right, in the software. So I started this very naively, as I said. I thought it was not going to be that difficult, but the spoiler here, it was difficult, and I ended up recoding the whole visualization module in ETE. I had to actually change the model. Whoa, this is super loud now. I had to change the whole visualization mode that we had in ETE. So what I'm going to tell you next is some of the optimizations that I managed to code and that are actually allowing me to move very large trees. It's still a prototype. Sorry. It's still a prototype, but as I said in the beginning, I'm super happy that at least we have something that is working with very large data structures. Tree data structures. So the first thing I did is the obvious change in the algorithm that anybody would do. So if you have 5 million nodes in the tree, you don't need to show all at the same time. is something simple, but the programs out there are not doing this. Most of the programs are not doing this. So as soon as you load something like this, if you manage to load it, it will try to draw everything, the whole tree at the same time. This is collapsing. The computations are too hard. So the solution for this is know what you are showing. Know if you are at this zoom level, you know what are the nodes that are in principle visible, collapse the rest. Hide the rest. You don't need to draw this. And this is something that I learned because when I started this, many people tried to convince me that the solution is OpenGL or this kind of implementations in the backend. It was not. Actually, I don't need to draw very fast. I just need to select what needs to be drawn at each zoom level. I don't need to draw everything. Actually, I was convinced for a while, and I coded everything with OpenGL and other renders that are much more efficient, and it was the same. As soon as you got to a limit of 10,000 graphical items at the same time being drawn, even with OpenGL, this gets unresponsive and not good. So the trick here was to know what is being shown at each zoom level, collapsing, and then adapt to what the user wants to see at each time. I prepared some videos. I hope they work. So this is a small tree, 1,000. As you see, the mouse is very responsive, and you can zoom in very easily and browse the tree. And the nodes that are collapsed in the first place are being expanded as you zoom in, right? And there are no overlaps, etc. This is a very basic example. This was the first attempt, and with this trick, just with this trick, I could start loading trees that were thousands of nodes. I was able to load this and to move the tree. This doesn't mean that the image that was receiving and interpreting was actually useful. And the reason was that I also had to work with the information that was shown for each branch when I was changing the zoom. Here in this example, I managed to load 100,000 tips. Okay, let's see the video. And notice what I'm doing here is this. I will call these faces because this is the name that I use in ETE. Node faces are the graphical items attached to the different nodes, and you can control this programmatically. You can add distance, support values, images, heat maps, whatever you want to the nodes. So you see the faces here, and you are going to see in the video how when we are changing the zoom level, the position and the size of those faces are being adapted to the zoom level. So all these numbers that you see here are only shown if there is enough space in this branch to be shown, and if they are not that small that are unreadable. And this happens on the fly very fast and allows you to have this feeling of being able to interpret what you are seeing. This doesn't mean that the trees are suddenly interpretable. I had another problem that was actually a huge problem, especially for phylogenetic trees, which is that even for small trees, you don't need 100,000 tips here. Even for small trees, there is the problem that even if you can move the tree, you can load it, you can browse, and there are no overlaps between the graphical items that are there. There is the problem that the branch lengths are unreadable because you are using only one branch scale for the whole tree. So the branches that are very basal are maybe okay, but when you zoom in, these branches start getting too large, and you cannot actually interpret anything from the tree. In this case, this is ITOL, which kind of implements a system to collapse the nodes as well. And you can actually browse large trees, but you get this effect. The overlapping and the branch lengths are too large. You cannot actually work. You can load trees that are very large, but you cannot work with these trees. So I made the experiment with my collapsing function that I showed before, and using only one branch scale, and this is how it looks. Still not useful for large trees. So the nodes are going to be expanded as needed, but the basal branches are fine, but when you are trying to get the leaves, it's very difficult because you are zooming in, the branches are getting too large, and you cannot actually get to the point where you can compare the topology of the tree in different tips, etc. So it took me a while to implement something that was fixing this, and is what I call the dynamically adjusted branch lengths in the tree. So the software knows what is the zoom level you are working at. It knows also the size of the screen. It knows perfectly what are the elements that are being shown, and then the branch lengths are adapted for you. So it tries to know what you are trying to see. So the same tree, the same zooming, etc., looks like this in this case. So we are trying to reach the leaves. And now you see, when you are zooming in, the branches, the branch scale that is being used at each zoom level is different. So you cannot compare the branches here with the basal ones, but it doesn't matter because you don't see the basal branches when you are looking at the leaves. And when you are zooming out, the leaves are too small. You don't care about this, but you can compare the branches that are in the bottom. And this is something that occurs dynamically, independently for each branch, and it took me a while to have an algorithm that is not final, but it is working quite well, and it allows you to actually interpret what you are seeing in the tree. I said in the beginning that I wanted to have something working also with fully annotated nodes, so fully annotated trees, meaning that I wanted to have complex annotations for the nodes, etc. This is an example where I'm using one typical way of representing data in these tree data structures in phylogeny, which are heat maps representing any value. This is random value, but random values, but it shows what I want to show here, which is that there is another problem when you are trying to show features of the nodes at different zoom levels. So here is fine. You can see like the representation of all these features for all the nodes, but when you start zooming in here, what do you think is going to happen? You are going to lose track of this. You start losing perspective of what you want to, what you actually want to analyze. So it is also something that I implemented, this dynamic adjustment of the aligned faces, the aligned features. So when you are zooming in, I don't know if you noticed, but when you are zooming in and focusing here, the aligned faces, you will see here, are getting closer to you. So we are moving this on the fly to get you the information for the nodes that you have in your screen. You don't care about the rest. You just want to know what is here for the nodes that you want. So even in very unbalanced trees like this, you try to zoom in the small branches here. You will get a good representation of the topology there, but also all the annotations are there. And this annotation could be whatever. It could be the heat map, or in our case, we work with alignments, so it could be sequences, etc. So how much can we scale this? So the good news is that I implemented everything in such a way that it scales linearly, meaning that it's not going to explode easily. I was showing some examples before with 100,000 tips. I tried to load 5 million tips, so 10 million nodes, in my laptop, which is 5 years old, not super good hardware. And it worked. And once it is loaded, because there is a lot of pre-computation beforehand, so it takes this huge tree takes 5 minutes to preload. I compute everything that I need to show you something that is usable and interpretable. And once you have this, with one CPU, 7 gigs of RAM, you get something like this. So very smooth zooming, etc. If I can find a pointer, yeah. So you can move very fast. You can browse in the same way, and the scaling algorithm is allowing you to always have something that you can interpret, so the topology is actually always there. The faces are adapted, everything. I also implemented recently the possibility of having overlay labels on top of the tree, which are also non-overlapping and allows you to guide your zooming ins and zoom ins out. And with this, I will finish. This is just a prototype. We want to improve many things here, the decorations, the usability of the GUI. There are a lot of things to do, but all these are basically the easy parts. Once the technical things are solved, this should be easy. If you are interested, stay tuned for alpha version releases that we will make public soon. And that's it. Thank you very much to all of you.
That was wonderful. Oops. Is this microphone on? Yes. Yes, good. So you mentioned that you do a lot of pre-computation. What kind of data structure did you use in order to make the rendering aware tree structure?
So
can you see whether there are any ways of improving the indexability of it?
The data is just stored in a big matrix, NumPy matrix, very efficiently, and I'm computing dimensions of things, positions, etc. And I'm using just the hierarchy of the nodes as the main trick to know what is being shown or not shown, etc. The hierarchy of all elements that are being shown, plus all the pre-computed dimensions of all the stuff that is there, and together the algorithms can do this type of things.
Thank you.
Actually, 2 questions. Briefly, did you look at Dendroscope? Because Dendroscope uses pretty much the same tricks.
Yes, Dendroscope can load these large trees.
But it can't do the nice things that you can do, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, it's a typical example of you can load the data, you cannot do anything with it. I mean, for large trees, sorry, I could say the same for ETEs, and it's my own tool. But it's basically when you load something that is very large, there's this overlap of these branch length problems, the features. We all developing software for tree visualization have the same problem at the moment. We never met in person, but I realized that. I tried Dendroscope, yes, of course.
I'm just wondering where you need the pre-computation, because isn't it just as you go into the tree, you look at the node, you look at the bounding box. If it's too small, you just draw the bounding box, and if it's not small, you go further.
Yes, that's a technical trick that you can use to make the things working basically, but not interpretable. I mean, you still have the problem of you cannot extract the information there, at least for the type of things that we are doing. You always need to put everything in context, and this is what I tried here. We can discuss later, sorry.